Hello, Ken Spriggs here, filming my intro for my video. You might notice I'm not in front of my display cases or my hobby shelves, but I'm outdoors. I'm actually away in Pennsylvania visiting for my mother's 80th birthday. And it occurred to me that I have quite a bit of video on my Aries 1B that I should have already posted a video for. I very nearly have completed the kit and the base. I'm just working on a few things, but I've been working very heavily on it and trying to get it completed in time for Wonderfest, because I knew I was going to be gone for this weekend. I'll be going back home tomorrow, which is Sunday, right for Memorial Day. And that'll just give me the last week to get everything honed in. So I've already posted my starting video of my N1 Starfighter, which I began after I pretty much completed the Aries. But let me go ahead and post this video, and then once I get home and I get some more footage, I will post the final video for the Aries, including the base and the other things that I've done for it, and do the final reveal on that as well. But I didn't want to film inside my parents' home just to be respectful of them. But let me go ahead and get this video posted up, and then definitely be getting the other one here soon. So let's go ahead and take a look at the progress on the Aries 1B. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of an aside here and go back to the figures from Max Gruder and from Shapeways. So he did get in touch with me, and he actually provided me with the files of the figures, the stewardesses at first, and as you can see, I adjusted the sizes of them, and I took them down to 90% so that they fit better in the kit. And so he went ahead and readjusted it and reposted it. Now, he also provided me with the figure of Haywood Floyd, as you can see here. And eventually he gave me some files for the pilots. So they are a second set that he made on there as well. And you can see there he is sitting next to the stewardess. And I also got him in the same scale. And I compared the pilots to the ones that I had already in my cockpit that are not from Max Gruder, and they would fit into the seats. And I really like the detail that he adds. Max Gruder is really really excellent designer at creating likenesses and how they look. So, but I had already put my pilots in, of course, so I didn't replace those. But I am going to be using the Haywood Floyd figure and his stewardess figures as well. So I ended up then adjusting the male figures to be about 105% of what we had the mats. You can see there, the one on the left's just a little bit bigger. And I kind of went by how their head is up over top of the seat. And it's just a little bit more there. So I took those up to 105%, which he adjusted them as well. And you can see him there with the stewardess. So he is a little bit more stocky and a little bigger than she is. So I think those scales are going to look right, and there they are, the final ones. So he does have them available on Shapeways, but he also has them available on CGTrader, and I'll put all the links in the description. All right, so I've been working on this light ring to go into the top above the elevator, to go into this part right here. I do have the clear part in that I scuffed up a bit, but I wanted it to have nice diffusion, so I created this ring that'll go down, and it fits all around this, and I'm going to paint it black so it's all contained and gets light just down through that. Because all I'm using are 4 Mega SMDs. I could have used more, but I didn't want to waste them. And you don't really see it that well. It's hard to see it at that angle from through the windows of the cockpit, I mean the passenger section, but you can. So I realized that I forgot to film what the inside was. So all it is really is this inner piece of styrene that I cut out and glued into a ring shape, the outer one, and then 2 rings on the top and bottom. The bottom one is going to fit right over top of that and diffuse the light. So I then glued in, see if I can show it, though I don't want to break it back off, but I only glued some of it. So there you go. So you can see I have
the Mega SMD glued in there facing straight down. So I have 4 of them. I have 1 at each of the sides. So it gives it enough light that once I get this painted black, it should glow sufficiently to glow that ring and give me the light coming down by the elevator. So let me finish getting this glued together, and then I'll get it painted, and then I'll show you how that's going to look on there. All right, and there's the ring that I painted black. And I tested it first with the clear section in, and it looked fine, but I took that out, and I think I like it better. It doesn't diffuse it as much. It's brighter. Now, there is a bit of a recess. You can see the bottom of that I left white. The rest I painted black. So let me turn that on. Now, of course, in the video, it's going to look really bright. And I masked it off really good, so there's a little bit of light leak, but nothing major that's going to affect the cockpit or anything above it, so I'm not worried about it. But there's there it is in the bottom. So if you look at it from an angle, you're going to see the edges of of that part there. But quite honestly, it's really hard to see that from the windows. You are going to see the light over the elevator and the floor, which I'm more concerned about than seeing those lights there at that angle, because it's sitting down in low, and it's just not easy to see. Let me go ahead and put that in there and show you. All right, there it is without the roof, and you can see you're getting some nice light onto the elevator. Sorry, got the focus. And it's definitely showing it's illuminated from above. You're also getting light reflecting off of the white floor and those white panels. So let me go ahead and put the roof on, and I'll show you. It's a little harder because it's going to be flush with it, but let me show you. So even if I go down really low, I am barely seeing those over the edge of that windowsill. I'm sorry, I just cannot get this to focus on the foreground. But even when you do, it looks pretty cool, and you really can't tell that it's recessed a little bit. And there's going to be a bigger ledge here anyway with the window, so you're in the chairs, they're going to be in the way, so I'm not too worried about that. I like the brightness of it a lot better. So let me put the roof on and show you that. All right, there we go. So there I'm showing from the side. So you can see how bright it is down in that little area there, which is what I really wanted. So I want that to be glowing, and I want the elevator to be lit up, and it certainly is. And so if you take it down a little bit, you can almost catch that there's some individual patterns and lights, but just barely. So I think that's the way to go. I'm not going to worry about putting the clear part back in, but I think that's going to be pretty cool. And keep in mind, the outer ring of lights are going to be lighting up the rest of this. So that'll catch the inside and the inside chairs, and the outer ring will catch the rest of it. And I think it'll give me just the right ambience that I want on the inside. So looking pretty cool. All right. All right, so here are all of my 14 light boxes that I have the Mega SMD glued into the end, 5-minute epoxied, ready to go. And I just glued the wiring part up onto the top there. I will trim these wires down at the end once I get them glued onto the kit, and combine them all into one set of lights, one set of wires, obviously. And these 3 are already that way. These are 4 that came this way from Evan Designs, 4 of them wired into one set of wires, but I'll trim these way down, obviously, the really long red and black one. And then I had to do 2 individual ones because there's 14, obviously. So I just had 2 individual ones to go into those 2, since 3 times 4 is 12. All right, and what I also did, which I showed in the previous stills, is I glued on the inner ring of the styrene that I cut off on my vinyl cutter. Now, these ones I'm not going to light. And what I also noticed on the film is that they are dark. They're not just dark, but they're actually the color of the ceiling. They're dark gray or black or whatever the ceiling is. I went with a dark gray rather than a black. And this is actually darker than it looks like on the camera. But they're not lit up at any point in the film. And at the beginning, when we first see Haywood Floyd sleeping, he's underneath one of the outer lights and it's turned off. And it still was white. It's not dark like the inner rings. So I'm going to imagine that they didn't even put any light panels or fluorescent lights into the inner ring at all, because they had no intention of lighting it for this set. So they didn't want to waste the money or the time. So they just put some dark panels over them to look like they could be lights. If they had a full passenger complement of 28, then they would probably put the inner light on. So I'm just lighting the outer ring, and I'm lighting that light over top of the elevator, and that's going to be it. You can see a little bit of light coming through those dark ones, but these are going to be light blocked. Everything's going to be light blocked. Once I put those on the top here, I'm going to spray this all with the black again and light block everything so that none of the light is leaking from the passenger lights. Same with the cockpit. Cockpit's going to be all contained, so there won't be any light leaking down to the passenger section and vice versa. So, all right. So let me go ahead and get these all glued onto the ceiling kit part, and then we'll get this lighting completed on the passenger section. All right, so here are all the light boxes glued on with 5-minute epoxy, and they've set up and it's hardened. I got all the wiring in. I glued on the little elevator top part that goes down, and I have the lights wired together and run off into 2 different strands that I have wired together into a battery. I just have a AAA battery right now, but I'm going to be using a AA battery holder to power it more. So everything's all wired. The reason I did 2 different wires is because I hate to wire together too many things. That's when you tend to get a break. I may trim this down even more before I'm done, but it's neatened up enough for now to go ahead and do a demonstration. So let me go ahead and turn that on, and obviously we're on the top of it. So, all right. So you have all the outer lights lighting up. The inner ones aren't lighting, of course. You can barely see the ring down there. But let me go ahead and turn it over, and I'll show you how that's going to look. All right, there we go. So there are all the outer lights lit up. The ring lights over the elevator are all lit up. That ring is glued onto it. So this ceiling part's all completed. Let me go ahead and put that onto the bottom and just kind of give you an idea of what it's going to look like. All right, so I set the top on it and put all the pieces together. Obviously, the bottom isn't there, so you're seeing this opening here, but kind of give you an idea, and it's going to be a bit tricky. See if I can enlarge it. All right, and there's no seats in it, of course, so you're going to see the elevator. Come on. There's some of the lights. Let me take it over here. There we go, it's a better shot of the lights. And we're missing the bathrooms, so that part is opened up there. Kind of see down into the well just a little bit. And you can see more with your eye when you're looking in. It's hard with the camera because I'm trying to focus it and get it to look in there right. Okay, there's what I was talking about, where you can just barely see like the lights under or above the elevator. You can't really make them out that much. See the steps in there. All right. There we go. That's a pretty good shot. Okay, and certainly there'll be more to see once I get the chairs in and the figures in there. The TVs aren't painted either, and I'm going to be lighting some of those up with some images. So those have to be completed. All right, but definitely looking pretty cool. Go back down to... There we go. Okay, but it kind of gives you an idea what you're going to see in there. And obviously I don't have it pressed on all the way or anything glued in place. All right, but that's the completed lighting for now, at least for the passenger section. Obviously once I get the cockpit in there, I'll have to get that wired together with it also. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to get some seats put in just to kind of see how they look with the lighting, make sure that they look the right color. I might have to either lighten or darken them depending on how they look, but that's looking pretty cool. All right. All right, so I just stuck some seats in there. They're not glued in permanently, but I put them in there to kind of give you an idea. And it's hard to focus because it wants to focus on the chairs and not on the background, like the elevator or the back panels. So I have to keep trying to refocus it around those. All right, definitely a lot more going on there. Sorry for the shakiness, but it's real close up. There's the chairs. All right. And again, I mean, it's really hard to get a camera to see what your eye would normally see. So your eye is going to see this a lot easier. You'll be able to move around and see different things. Take it back down. There we go. Okay. But from a distance, when you're looking into the ship, when it's all together, it's going to be pretty cool. You're going to be able to move around, and see different things in there. If I have something on the TV, you're going to see that, plus it'll be painted. All right, it's looking pretty good. I'm going to have to look at the chairs a little bit in this light and just see if I like how they look. They might have to lighten them up a little bit. We'll see, but not looking too bad. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so I have the the bathrooms done and attached. You can see the little 0G toilet label. That's just a kit decal that it came with. I think those are a little easier to see. I also received the Paragraphics ones, and they're good, but they're just a little more faint. So I like these ones better, and I'm not trying to light them up, so I didn't need the backlight gels. All right, so I have both of the bathrooms glued down completely. So at this point, I'm just ready to go ahead and get the seats down because that's the last thing to do in the bottom here. But I want to just keep checking the colors of them. I went back and I did a light misting of some white over them just to bring them back up from that dark yellow to be just a bit more in the tan range, but they are still yellowish. I'm not going to do the same with the bases. I don't care about them. You're not going to see them. They're going to be hidden on there. You really can't see the bases very well from the windows anyway. I do still have to put the decal in the middle of that little square there. And I'm already starting to consider how I'm going to position everything. So I have a little F right here for Floyd. He's going to be sitting in the seat right here. I have an S over here for the stewardess. She's going to be sitting in a seat facing this way. And over here is where the TV is. and that's going to be lit up. And I'm using the Paragraphics Backlight gel for that, or backlit film for that, and I'll show that here once I start working on it. Actually, I started working a little box for it, but I have to do some more cutting out of that part. All right, so the trick to these seats, I've painted these multiple times now with different things. I'm really liking this, and I just kind of let it settle for a couple days. They're definitely much more subtle, and when the lights are on, and then you have the yellow from the side rails, which are darker yellow, it kind of adds to it. So they're looking pretty good. I think they're going to work out this way. Considered a couple times maybe just lightly taking it back slightly to the yellow range, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I like them where they are, and it's really hard to tell. The problem is that they're lit up in different ways and different lights, and so they look different during those scenes. So, all right. I also finished up my Haywood Floyd. Sorry, it's hard to get a good image of him. He's looking down, he's eating off of his food tray, which it would have little straws in it, but I'm not going to even try to do that. This figure also has some seat belts on him, which I don't think he had shoulder straps, but that's okay. I went and painted those gray and some little bit of silver on them, or steel. He has a dark gray suit on. His hair is a little darker. I don't know if I'm going to make it a little darker, but I made it a dark brown. It's more of a black almost. But let me see if I can get him in here without knocking it over. Okay, here we go. So he's going to be visible from the window, of course. Eating his food. Looking pretty cool. I also completed the two stewardesses that I'm going to put in the passenger section. So here's the standing one. Come on. Here we go. And her tray as well. I just dabbed on some little odd shapes of colors. Some green, red, orange, yellow. Some blue over to the right, was supposed to be the Pan Am symbol. A little bit of brown, because that's all that it looks like. And then the bottom of the tray is blue. A light blue. I'm probably going to have her down in here. We'll see. And then I have the other stewardess, who's going to be sitting in a chair watching the TV. Now, she's designed in that pose, that seated pose, to be in the pilot, in the cockpit, in the back seat, but you can't see her back there. So I'd rather have her in a seat over here watching the TV. And I don't know if the placement's quite correct, but I know he's sort of across the way from her. I don't know where he's at exactly. But the way I want it to be visible is this side you're going to be seeing in and see him. You'll be able to look through the window and see her over there as well, and from other windows. But I know that she's sitting next to a bathroom. So there's the bathroom. She's sitting in this chair over here. The TV's right there, and she's kind of angled at it. So, all right. So definitely coming together. I want to do one more test with the lights on with these chairs to see if they look good enough for me, if I want to do any more fussing with their color before I get those glued in place. All right, so I'm kind of test fitting everything now that I've got the seats all glued into the passenger section. Everything is glued in place except for the elevator, and the figures aren't permanently glued in, but I'm just kind of figuring out where to position them. So I'm really liking the way the light looks, and it's going to be hard to capture this on camera, but it definitely looks a lot more subdued and realistic. You can see the light panels, you can see the chairs, the yellow walls. Haywood Floyd sitting there eating his meal. Come on, focus. Might have to do a little bit more in his face. You got the stewardess with the dinner tray getting ready to go up the elevator. I'm just trying to get it to focus. Focus. Come on. Oh, for crying out loud. All right. Well, and I've got the other stewardess over here. So I don't think they're really positioned where they're supposed to be in the film, but there we go. But I want to be able to see them because this is the way I'm going to display it. And in addition, the way it looks on the film dropping down to the moon, the way I'm going to be doing it, you have the two windows in the front. You've got these cockpit windows on this side, kind of coming towards you. You do not have the door. The door's on the opposite side, but I'm still going to put it over here just because I want to see the door. The door is a cool feature. And it's also going to be my battery compartment that I take off. So a little bit of license going on here. I'm going to have Haywood Floyd right here where you can see him in the front. Obviously, and I just showed you the other stewardess. So she's over there watching a TV. I think she's actually next to a bathroom, in which case that would be on the other end, but we're not going to worry about that either. And then, of course, the stewardess trying to come into the elevator there. You can almost focus now. Thank you. See more of the lights. You can see the weightless gravity, weightless condition. Just barely start to make out those lights over top of the elevator. You can even see some of the stairs a little bit down and below. Now, this whole top's going to be removable. I'm not going to have it glued on permanently. So I'll be able to take it off and see inside. But for right now, I'm really happy with that. I'm happy with how that looks. I'm glad that I went with making the seats a little bit more of a pale yellow or more towards the beige side, or the I'm not sure what you would call that, but they don't scream out yellow when you look right in. You can see the lights, you can see the two chairs, and you can certainly look around and see some other features inside of there. So okay, all right, so I'm just waiting on a battery pack to come in, some batteries that I'm going to be using, some rechargeable ones, because I have to get the batteries all finalized down in here and get that ready to go before I'm ready to glue the interior floor down into the kit. That has to be glued down pretty solidly, and then we'll go over that. And then definitely coming near the end of getting this completed. Fantastic. All right, so I'm getting ready to attach down the bottom section into the ship itself. So I was looking at a Facebook group online. I belong to a couple of them building this kit. And one of the other modelers had used some screws to screw down his bottom part into the ship. And so I asked him a few questions. He ended up, I think he used a bigger screw. He ended up stripping the part, so he put some styrene tube in it. But I ended up getting these pretty small screws. They are number 4 by 1/2 inch, pretty tiny. And they're just short enough that when you press this down and you put these in, it just starts to bite into that little tube, because these are open holes. So these are open holes for the tubes that slide down into the tubes in the bottom of the ship. And so I can easily screw these down and on the other side, and it holds it down nicely. It's nice and tight. Now the other sides, just have to make sure that they're pressed down all the way. And unfortunately, they don't have this opening like this does. So if you were to try to do that, the screw would be here in the carpet. So I can't really screw down those sides. But I think that's going to work really nicely. It holds it down in place. And then if I want to remove it to get into some of the areas where the battery is going to be, I certainly can do so. And you can see I already glued in a connector, and this just plugs in to the female part that's going to come down from the ceiling. And I have that cemented in and cemented in the bottom, and it's going to actually come over and attach to the batteries that are going to go through the door right here. So they're not in there yet. It's not connected yet. But I did want to go over a few other things. I did end up repainting the supports for the chairs to match them because they looked a little too off with the brighter yellow. And one other thing I showed in pictures but I didn't really talk about is the elevator door. So those little sections there in the middle that are white, I don't know if they're always white, but whenever the elevator is coming down, they do the old trick where a light comes down. It looks like there's an elevator. I'm sure it's not really an elevator. It just opens up and they go inside and they close the door. And then they have this light that looks like it's moving. But what I did was I used some more of the white stripping that I used on the steps, the back of the steps. And I just used it and cut it into pieces and just stuck it right inside the elevator door to give it that white appearance. Gives a little bit of character, which I think is kind of cool. All right. The thing I'm wiring to light up is one of the TV displays, the one that the stewardess is looking at. And I'll show you here in a little bit once I get them positioned, but the way that I'm going to have them set up is the front of the ship is going to be basically these two windows. Haywood Floyd's going to be sitting right about here. The stewardess is going to be sitting over here and looking towards the TV. And then I'm going to have the other standing stewardess with the tray in this area by the elevator. So that they're all going to be visible from the front of the ship. Because we're going to be looking in like this direction. These will be the two front windows that we're looking in. We'll be able to see Haywood Floyd, be able to see the stewardess. The TV will be visible. You'll be able to see her from this angle as well. So I decided to do that rather than having her on the other side of the ship because that's going to be behind the way it's displayed in the base and you're not going to see it. So what I did was I went ahead and I cut out the pegs of all four of these, and I had that marked TV because that's originally where I was going to have her. So I cut out the pegs on all four of these little pieces because I'm going to use magnets. These ones right here. And I figured the best way to get the best magnetic seal is in 4 equidistant points. Still leave these 2 with the pins so I can line it up and have it go down in, so when I put the top back on, it'll line up easily. And then the 4 magnets will be nice and strong. So I'm still working on the idea of how that magnet's going to be encased in here, if I'm going to use epoxy sculpt or I'm going to use some kind of sheet styrene or tube styrene. We'll see. I'll get something going on that. But this one would have a TV. It's still going to have a magnet over to the side. But I made a little light box right here. And I have one Mega SMD in it. And I painted black all around the outside of it. I also took some UV black styrene sheet. And I put it in there in all the places that it would let light come through around that light box. The light box itself is going to be masked because of the black paint around it. But and once I get it glued in place, I can put more black around it. But I didn't want light coming through the other sides of it, so I just pretty much put a border around that little rectangular part, which is the TV in the front. And then I got the Paragraphics set that has the little TV displays. Here's one that I took out and I've just been playing with, and it's the sumo wrestling. So that fits right into that, and then it's translucent, so light shines through it. So it will show through and have just the screen part lit up. I'm going to use a different image though. I don't want to use that one. But there's several images from Kubrick's films, and I'll show that here once I get those going. But for now, I want to get that glued down inside. And this wire is going to go down through to the bottom, of course. So that'll wire into the wiring that's going to go to the battery that I'll access through the hatch door. The remaining wires are all going to be coming from the ceiling or the top dome, which I'm going to have one set of wires that I'm going to bring down through one of the bathrooms, which would be, let's see, what did I say? This was the front. So the bathrooms are at these parts right here. So I'm going to do it in the back one, and I'm going to have it going down through, and there's actually going to, well, it isn't going to go, it's going to come up out of this one. It's going to come down out of the top, and I'm going to have a disconnect there that I can unplug if I want to take the top off and look inside. And then of course the wiring will go down through and meet with the rest of the wiring in the power supply. So it'll meet with these wires and the power supply in order to light everything. And then when I want to take the top off, I just unplug it, plug it back into the connect, and then everything else in the top is going to be powered into one set of wires coming down from that top dome. So, okay. All right, and there's the completed TV display. Show it from that angle. It looks nice and evenly lit in person. You can probably tell what I picked there. Have the shining. Little Danny on his big wheel going down the hallway. I don't know if you can't quite make out if the evil twin girls are there in the hallway, but they're about to be. I just thought that's pretty cool. Pick something that from Kubrick, since they gave all of his movies. Let me show you this here. So here's the backlight sheet that they give you. So there were several choices. The Sumo Rest, there are several of those. Plague on the Moon, which was kind of appropriate. Then he had a bunch of his films, like I think that's, what is that called? Something of War. Clockwork Orange, Spartacus, Lolita, Eyes Wide Shut, Dr. Strangelove, of course The Shining. And if you want to light the caution waitlist condition, you have to do some cutting, but you can put those there. There's the ones for the zero gravity toilet. I ended up using the decals as I showed because, or as I will show, because I just thought they looked a little crisper. You can't read them anyway, they're so tiny, but I like them better. They also include these panels, which I made out of styrene, but you could use these as the fusion for the ceiling lights, and this ring as well for the ring over top of the elevator. And they gave you these. I don't know what you would do with these if you'd put them on the outside of the ship. You decided to. You got the Pan Am symbol, which oddly enough it doesn't have on it, even though the Space Clipper did, which is strange. And the United States Aeronautical Agency, which is what they called it in the film. They also have, and I tried it at first, they have decals. So here's their versions of the decals, sorry. Now they also have that one fly Pan Am with the Space Clipper in the Station 5. The same thing. I tried the decal. It looked all right, but I like the backlit film better. Here's that other one that I looked at. I thought about doing this one. This one's kind of cool. But I didn't like that it was mostly black. And the only other one I wanted to try, which I thought was pretty cool, is this one here, which is the futuristic car, which actually we see this on the Space Clipper. It's on the TV on the Space Clipper. And I thought that looked pretty cool. It had some nice colors in it. It looked realistic, but I ended up going with The Shining, which I thought was appropriate. There's the decal. I took it back off. Yeah, I think the twins are back there. It's really hard to see them, but they're there. But if you just put the decal over white, it would look kind of cool, but when you light it up, the backlit film looks better. So, all right, pretty cool. So I'll be showing these together on the interior pretty soon. I'm holding off showing it all at once until I get it completed. All right, so as I showed in the previous video, I put some magnets onto my parts to go for the top sphere to be able to be attached and removable, and it would go on by magnets. So the first thing I did was I drilled out the hole, and I did it in all the places where the TV screens would be. And I glued in, I made it big enough for this magnet, as you can see, glued it in with some CA glue. Now this one here, and I'll show you in a moment, this one's off center because that's the TV screen that I'm lighting up. So it had to be off to the side because the obviously the little light box that I showed previously is inside of that TV screen there. So once those were glued in, then I took this tube that's the right size for the magnets. Pull that off. It's really strong. Come on. All right. And I have another magnet inside of it. So a couple of things you want to be careful of. First of all, you have to have the polarity right. So once these were glued in, and I have this sticking up just slightly, then I went ahead and put the magnet on so it was the right polarity. I dabbed a little bit of CA glue around the edge of it. You can see how it's inset. And then I put the tube down over it so that it would harden around the magnet. And if a little bit gets around the other magnet, it wasn't a big deal. I just twisted it off and it broke it loose. And then once it was done and the magnet was set up inside, then I filled it with 5-minute epoxy so it's nice and solid. And I did that with all of these. So this part removes. So what's going to happen is the magnet's going to be glued. This is actually upside down, so this is the part that goes on the ceiling. And the little part here is what goes down into the actual kit. Let me show you. All right, so there we go. So here are the TV sections. There's 4 of them, and they're equidistant around it, so I figured that would be the best hold. If need be, I can always put some magnets in here, or possibly these ends. These ends are tough because there is no corresponding part of this that goes over top of it. This just comes over like this, so it doesn't have any plastic there, but it could be done. I could extend it out. But you can see then, so this one with the little light boxes for the TV screen, and I have the wire going down through the kit. I have to put it over to the left side of it so it would actually fit down in there. And then you can see that these holes line up with these pins. And the only pins remaining on the top, I had to snip off all the other pins because they would have been in the way of the magnets. And I just have the 2 pins on this side, the 2 pins on this side. So those will be nice to aid in lining up the top and putting it down the way it's supposed to be. And it can only go one of 2 ways. And I already know the way it's going to go from the way that the cockpit is oriented. So now what I'm going to do is, now that I have this put together, because the trick is, the second important thing is that you have to then glue the other part of the magnet. See, this part's already done. This one here in the top roof. This part here is going to be glued into the ceiling, and it's going to be permanent with the upper sphere. So when I pull it off, this magnet is going to come loose of this little piece here, which is going to be then glued down into here and all these other ones. And I had also cut out these pegs here, of course, because I had to have room for that to go down inside so that it will go and glue down inside. So once I'm done, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a bunch of 5-minute epoxy down in here and all these ones here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put down the top, and I have to hold it in place while the 5-minute epoxy is hardening, because there's just a little bit of pressure to make it meet up snug. And I'm still trying to figure out why that is. It's very strange. I mean, it fits in other things. Like if I take this off of here, it fits. I'm still not figuring out what is causing the problem. I know watching Lou Del Masso's video, he thought it might have been the elevator tops, well, the bathroom tops or the elevator top, but it doesn't seem to be creating any pressure. He ended up putting a little strip of styrene around it to just fill that groove in. I may have to do that. I'd like to not do it only because it's not a part of it and I don't want it to look unnatural. So let me try it this way. If I can hold these down enough so that the 5-minute epoxy sets up in each of these 4, then they'll be positioned. Then once I remove it, these magnets will stay down inside and be solidified in the 5-minute epoxy. And then this will pull loose from it. And then it'll be in the right position so the magnets will line up when I put the roof back down again to put it back on. All right, so let me go ahead and fiddle with this a little bit more, and then I want to go ahead and get these magnets glued down into here. And really the only way to do it is with everything together, because if I were to just stick these on here, they look like they're good, but I don't want to run into the problem with these pins not lining up at the ceiling or the whole thing being off just a little bit. So you really have to do it all together in order to get those magnets to be just where they need to be. In addition, I don't want to put too much 5-minute epoxy down in there because I don't want it gushing out and making a mess either. So this is a pretty good size. So when this goes down inside here, let me show that over here. There's still plenty of room. And it sits flush when I do this. But then the edge of the sphere has to go overlap this. And so that's tricky too. But I think ultimately when I get these glued up into the ceiling, they'll be up solid enough that they're not going to be giving me any kind of an issue. It's the same with down here at the bottom. You know, this has to be flush. This whole part has to be down in there the way it's supposed to be, or it just is not going to work and it'll give you grief. That's why I was showing you that I screwed them in, because that keeps it down nice and tight. But you definitely want to make sure that those are done all the way too, because any of this sticking up is going to run into a problem with it matching up the way it's supposed to be, because a lot of delicate parts have to go together just right for this to fit and not have a gap or a problem. So all right, so I do have the magnets glued down into the little TV compartments all the way around. Now before I did that, I was just not real concerned about that little bit of a gap, and it just wasn't quite seating. It was funny, like it comes into one or other. Still wondering if there's something going on with this, but there doesn't seem to be any paint wear or scraping or the bathroom, so I'm not sure. But what I did was I went ahead and took some thin stripping. This one here, 0.020 thick by 0.60 wide. It's very thin. And I just glued it on the edge of each of these, just these. I didn't do it on the top part. And I can always sand that down to adjust it if there's any gaps, you know, to get it the final adjustment. I did it on all of them all the way around. Once that was dried, I put everything on. I did one side at a time because these two pieces, of course, are separate. So right now I have this piece off, and there's the magnets in the top. And you can see I have those glued in with quite a bit of 5-minute epoxy. There's still a lot of room there, so what I'll do is just put some more epoxy in there, not clear to the top, but just encase it even more. It's in there solid, but I just want to be sure that that's not going to come loose. And then on the other side as well. And then obviously then this just goes down into the magnets. It's a really strong hold. So at this point nothing is still attached. This bottom is not glued in or attached. This is obviously loose from the ceiling. So it's really hard to tell if there's going to be any gaps until I get it all together and do that final checking with it. And I can do some final adjustments on it. So I'm looking at some ways. Certainly the bottom is screwed down, which is nice because that can be removed if I need to. I'm not quite ready to glue this into the bottom just yet until I finish testing it, because I may want to put some magnets, possibly one here and over on the other side, This would be tricky, but I could figure out some way to put a magnet in there as well to go in the top, because there's nothing in the top to correspond to it. I'd like to be able to screw the top onto the sphere, so I may look at ways of doing that, because that would be very nice if I could remove this. Now, the only issue being that you have things like this little gap where these two pieces meet, that sometimes it's raised up a little bit. You can see right there. So that could be an issue if that's not glued all the way down. So we'll see. It may be really hard to do that and keep this in place, because this has to be sealed up nice and tight. Otherwise, it's gonna give me some issues with it not fitting down right. So we'll have to look at that and see. I still have to get the wiring together, get the cockpit glued in, and then I can look at bringing the wires down through one of these bathrooms and going down through, where's that at? One of these here, or down through here. I'll have to drill a hole down, since I have the screws in those holes that would normally go through, but that's not a problem. Just drill a hole down through and bring it down through. All right, so I'm gonna keep working on that. I'm just hesitant to do any permanent gluing, because I want to make sure that there are no issues with these gaps before I do that. So, all right,
So we're going to wrap this video here. Quite a huge bit of progress, obviously. In the next video, I'll go ahead and get the cockpit glued in, the ceiling glued in, all those other parts done, and some other things that I'll be working on. And also be working on the base and showing you how I do that. Now, the base itself, the final version of it with the backdrop, the painting from Augie Gonzalez, will not, I won't have footage of that until I go to Wonderfest and I get the painting from him. So I'll show that in the next video. I'll show how it's going to look without that, and then you'll get an idea. But really the final reveal is going to be pictures of it at Wonderfest, showing how it all looks together. So, all right, but go ahead and enjoy this posted video here, and I'll be doing one more probably within a few days, and then also finishing up the N1 Starfighter. All right, thanks a lot.